Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful. Then I would like to call this meeting of the Economic Development and Recreation Services Committee to order for Wednesday, September the 22nd, 2021. Chair's announcements. And I just have one announcement, and that is that I would like to thank staff for continuing to ensure that the business of the TNRD carried on, even as they put in so much hard work and long hours into the emergency response during what was, I gather, an unprecedented fire season within the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. So thank you very much for ensuring that somehow the business of the TNRD carried on. I have one addition to the agenda, and that is that under item 5, delegations and invited presentations, we will be having a presentation from John Childerley from Atlas Information Management Limited. Are there any other additions to or deletions from the agenda? No. If someone could act as my eyes on the prize there, because you're all about the size of ants right now, and I can't really see if anyone's got their hand up.
Chair Roden, it's Agnes Satt. Just to let you know that I'll be filling in for Ms. Campbell today, and also that our CAO is at a meeting, but he should be here shortly. So we will keep an eye out here for anybody for hands up.
Perfect. Thank you so much. All right, we move on to item 4. We have the minutes from the Economic Development and Recreation Services Committee meeting of April 21st, 2021, and we have a staff recommendation.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing and hearing none on the question. All those in favor? I believe that is carried. So we move on to item 5, and the first of our two presenters is Ken Hagan, whose surname is spelled H-E-G-A-N, who is the screenwriter in residence for the Thompson-Nicola Regional Library. So is Mr. Hagan ready to go with his presentation?
I am, thank you.
Welcome, and the floor is yours, sir.
All right, this is really cool to be here. This is my childhood home, Kamloops, BC, and I'm here because I love movies and I love filming in Kamloops, and I'd like to encourage more of it. In fact, I've just finished, or about to finish, directing my first feature film. That's a pandemic comedy thriller that I started writing here in Kamloops, basically March 15th last year, when the world was quickly turning into an apocalypse. I fled Vancouver. I rented out my place there, and I realized where did I want to be? Where did I want to be when everyone was locked down at home? And I thought, I'm going to go take care of my mom, which generally means that we watch a lot of British murders on TV. So I filled my mini convertible full of gin bottles and tuna cans, about 70 cans of tuna for the apocalypse, bunch of toilet paper, and I drove up to Kamloops with an idea that I was going to write a new screenplay based on the crazy news stories we were seeing every day, March, April, May last year, when everything was canceled and people were shutting down. The film and television industry around the world, especially in Vancouver, just stopped overnight. And I had this dream that I would write a script that we would film in Vancouver, and I would be a success story coming out of the pandemic, assuming we had a vaccine soon. So every day in Brocklehurst, I would write my screenplay, writing down a fictional version of real life events. And I would rollerblade in the afternoon thinking of where I was going to film this and how I could afford to film this in Vancouver, as you know, is a very expensive city. It certainly has a huge film and TV infrastructure there. So that's great. That's successful for the people that work in film and TV there. They can pay their mortgages. But it means for an independent filmmaker like me who wants to find affordable locations, and if I want to shut a street down, it's going to cost me too much. There's no way I could tell my story there. And I quickly realized as I rollerbladed around the smooth streets of Brocklehurst and North Kamloops that I've always wanted to film something here. And I've always wondered why there wasn't a movie studio in Kamloops. The rich range of locations that you've got here: forest, desert, river, mountains. You've got snow country not that far away, free parking everywhere. And just a really terrific, open mindset to starting a business, which is essentially what I had to do, was start a business here. So I formed a production company with an experienced producer friend in Vancouver, and we location scouted and realized that Kamloops was so rich, we had to film it here. So we put together a massive whopping budget. I know you're going to be blown away by how much money we spent, but our cash budget had to be no greater than $150,000. And most of that was on the bank of mom and my credit cards and any grants that I could get. I did receive a couple of emergency COVID grants, small business incubator grants. All because I was going to hire a lot of local business owners and local crew. So we started filming just a few months in, and I'd just like to show you a little video to give you some background on the gorgeous locations we did get for next to nothing, because the city of Kamloops itself was so welcoming, and the people of Kamloops were terrific. Like, they thought it was really cool that I was going to be filming something when most films and TV shows were shuttered. Studios were shuttered for months. So here it is. We'll play the video. It's about 4 minutes long. Hope you like it.
You love movies, and you're gonna love Outrunners, the pandemic comedy we're filming during the pandemic we're actually in.
Hi, I'm Ken Hegan, writer-director of Outrunners, a feature-length comedy thriller that's like game night meets The Hunger Games.
Filmed right here in BC.
And to finish this awesome film, we just need 25,000 Canadian dollars.
We're gonna be late. Let's go.
Outrunners is about two ex-reality stars, Emily and Todd, who are racing to save the life of Emily's mother.
Could you run normal?
I am.
What the hell is that? Your gait is so weird.
She runs so weird.
So weird.
This is how professional runners run efficiently.
On what planet? Just run like a human person.
While they're being chased by reality show camera drones and deadly snipers. I wrote Outrunners right here in my hometown of Kamloops during the pandemic lockdown, while I turned the wildest stories into a suspenseful comedy.
Yet again, a deadly airborne virus has swept the planet and it's killing people in droves.
Why droves?
Is the president okay?
She died week 1.
Shia LaBeouf.
Dead.
Oh my God.
That's the thing that impressed me the most, is while all of us were dealing with the trauma of being isolated during the big lockdown, Ken Hegan just got busy writing a hilarious action thriller script all about the pandemic, capturing all the craziness and all the absurdity that we've all been dealing with. He's really created something that's really fun.
Is this happening?
Nice.
I believe you should always make the movie that you want to see. And I really want to see this movie.
Kamloops has such a unique look. You're going to 100% believe that we are shooting all over the world.
And action! I've directed 11 short comedy films, and I've been a writer on 20 TV shows.
This is my 4th feature production. I've been art director and production designer of some big shows.
Major makes movies look fantastic on a dime.
I love film. It's part of me, and this film is something that I truly believe in, and I think you're gonna love it when you see it.
You're gonna love our lead actors, Amanda McEwen and Matt Graham.
That was really sexy.
You're flirting? There's no time for flirting.
Hey, there's always time for flirting.
The locations are gorgeous, the actors are hilarious, and the story is laugh out loud funny.
All right, but I'm the muscle and you're the doorknob toucher, okay? You're the red shirt. Get the hand sanitizer before they drink it.
Amazing.
And huge thanks to our sponsors, Aviation Gin, Kevin Smith Beers, Main Street Brewing, and all these awesome supporters.
Honestly, I can't wait to screen it at the Rio.
We're done filming, and now we're adding music and visual effects. And that's where you come in. We need your help to finish this film. Back our film for as low as $75 and you'll get exclusive rewards and experiences.
It's such a great script capturing the moment, and I think it's a really good business opportunity because I think people are really going to want to see this film.
This is your opportunity to invest in our community.
So you caught the virus, hey?
There's no virus. It's total scamdemic horseshit.
This is like Hollywood on your doorstep.
I'm so excited about this movie, I decided to invest, and I think you should too.
So thank you, and we'll see you at the premiere.
So that was our pitch video that helped us raise about $15,000 to pay for visual effects and music and sound. And the only reason that I could have filmed something with so many epic, really incredible locations. Like we took over the Plaza Hotel. We took over a gentleman's, what I call the RV camp in Brocklehurst up in the hills. It's a retired CN gentleman who has a bunch of old Airstream trailers. I don't know if you've ever tried to buy one of those. They are so expensive. So basically he gave us his location, the use of his location free for 5 days. It would have cost us $2 million guaranteed anywhere else to create this set. But with his 15 used Airstream trailers, we got it all for about 6 cases of beer, which I thought was a really lovely Kamloops deal. And we just kept finding over and over again how welcoming Kamloopsians were. The city of Kamloops, I think the entire bill for the locations like the old naval munitions bunker up on the hill, running through the graveyard there, the entire bill was, I think, $0, maybe $100. And that afforded us the ability to actually bring in cast and crew from Vancouver and hire locals. No matter what, before I even could raise 150 grand, I knew that no matter what, I was going to film it on an iPhone and I was going to feed the crew tuna because I had some apocalypse stash. But over and over again, people kept stepping forward to offer us financing. You may have seen the logo for a local lawyer, Natalie Hubert, who became one of our investors. And Tourism Kamloops also contributed some money towards our production by paying for the rights to use our footage on their film promotion website to try and bring in more productions. I'm going to when the film's all done, I'm only going to take a little bit of the credit. I'm going to take all the responsibility if the story doesn't work. I think it really does. We're submitting to Sundance soon. One thing I will take some credit for is inspiring other filmmakers to come here. I think there's been 6 Hallmark films, 5 or 6 in the last year that would normally, I believe, I think they're Hallmark or the other channel. They would normally film in Kelowna. It seems like more of those films are filming here. And I can just quickly tell you the financial benefits if you attract another filmmaker to come here, because Kamloops is considered a distant region that's so far away from Vancouver, the tax credits are incredible. So we spent on a $150,000 budget, we spent about $100,000 on crew, and the rest, the other 50,000 will be on hard costs and food and so on, gas and lodgings. But for $100,000, we got about a 50% tax credit from the provincial and federal governments for filming here. So that means I can eventually pay off the bulk of my credit cards. And I want to film my next 4 features here and a TV series about craft breweries, which I'm researching and writing at the library now. So yeah, I just want to share a little bit of my story. Thank the city of Kamloops and encourage more of this really green production that you find when you get a film or TV company coming to town. They fill the hotels, they go to local restaurants. I now know that the Shark Club downtown has really great butter chicken. That's thanks to my actors. And yeah, thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me run around the streets telling my crazy story.
All right, well, thank you very much, Mr. Hegan. I'm getting some real Shaun of the Dead vibes there, crossed with how Sam Raimi, I understand, financed the Evil Dead. So we hopefully will be able to say we knew you when. Thank you very much for presenting that, especially the economic impacts. And also, I think this touches on something that I believe the film commissioner is going to talk on later, which is the importance of having a policy in your municipality or area regarding filmmaking to help make it easier for filmmakers to come into your community. And you certainly seem to be indicating that the city of Kamloops was able to welcome you on that front.
Yes, and the city of Kamloops was really helpful in introducing us to basically setting up my ability to shut down Victoria Street, which I think hadn't been done since the Power Rangers film. So that was quite an honor to be able to shut down the street for 4 hours safely. We were, of course, insured, which you would have to insist on. We had to be insured for $2 million or $5 million, and that allowed people the comfort to allow us in and start hiring local people. Yeah, can't wait to do it again.
Great. And hopefully we'll be able to hear from you in a few months' time about your screenwriter in residence stint with the TNRL. I'm looking very much forward to that, because I know that when Darren Collier was the writer in residence, she did a lot of outreach, and I think more than 40 people did one-on-one writer residency sessions with her, and I believe you're offering the same thing for screenwriters. So looking forward to hearing how that goes.
Yeah, thank you. And if anyone here has a script they're working on or want to pitch a TV show, I'd love to help you with it.
Great. Does anyone else have any more questions for Mr. Hegan?
No hands are raised.
No hands are raised. All right, well, thank you very much, and good luck. Look forward to seeing Outrunners when it screens at, I hope, the Paramount. All right, so we move on to what I suspect will be a very different presentation, and that is from John Childerley from Atlas Information Management Limited about community forests. And Director Story, I believe you wanted to say a few words of introduction.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. To the Chair and Committee, I'm really pleased we can tie off another project that you sunk your teeth into at a couple of economic meetings ago on the community forest, and whether or not there's some feasibility aspects to it. John was our choice of consultants, and I'll tell you, it's been a real pleasure working with John over the past year and a bit. And he's got a couple of slides he wants to speak to you about today, and it kind of reinforces part of the message that we wrote up in the report for the committee. So, John.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah.
I can just click that. Yeah. Forward there. Okay, thanks. Okay, thanks for having me, everybody. And good presentation, Ken. Just by coincidence, he's a tough act to follow, but Ken and I grew up a block away from each other, and I haven't seen him in a number of years. So total coincidence. So it was really good to see you, and watching your filmmaking career in the past number of years has been interesting. So thanks to Ron for introducing this. I put together a few slides. And we'll go from there. This was initiated a year and a bit ago with Ron and myself. And the idea is that would the TNRD be interested, or could they have a community forest? And so Ron and the TNRD had asked me to write a feasibility study on this prospect. And the idea with the feasibility study is to kind of give a background of what a community forest is, and then I'll ask the ultimate question to the TNRD. If they were given an opportunity to apply for a community forest, would they want to pursue that opportunity or not, knowing all the risks and benefits that go along with such a thing? So on the first slide here, I'll get into what a community forest is in general terms. Won't get into total specifics because they can be a little daunting a bit. But before I get into that, on the bottom portion of this slide, it talks about AAC and apportionment. Just so you know where things are at right now. In the Counts TSA, which is a timber supply area, pretty much mimics what the TNRD area is. I think there's some outlying areas that don't cover that. But within the Kamloops TSA, the ministry is going through what they call an apportionment process. So what that does is a TSR, Timber Supply Review, happens about every 10 years in each TSA. And what that does is it sets the AAC, which is the allowable cut, how much you can harvest in any given year. What's happening in the Counts TSA is we're presently sitting at, I think it's 2.3 million cubic meters. Everything's expressed by cubic meters, and is going down to 2.1 million cubic meters. That's what's been determined will be. Then the chief forester takes that information, knowing that it's going to drop by 2.3 to 2.1 million cubic meters, and apportions or allocates that volume to different licensees, whether it be the major licensees or smaller tenures and community forests. So during this process, Ron and I submitted an expression of interest to the ministry, saying that the TNRD was interested in the idea of having the apportionment process keep some volume out there for the TNRD. Now, this is non-binding. It just basically tells the TNRD that they're interested. The apportionment process was supposed to be finalized in the spring of 2021, but I think with the COVID situation and fires, it's been delayed. So as of now, we don't know if there's been actually a chunk of volume set aside for someone like the TNRD for a community forest. So that's the background, and timing is good in Counts because this apportionment process and TSR review has been going on at this time, where other TSAs have already been done. What is a community forest? I'll try to be brief on this. You can either ask questions now or just hit me up afterwards. So basically it's an area-based tenure. So if you're given a community forest, it's a chunk of area in a specific area, unlike other licenses, which are volume-based tenures, where you could go all over the Counts TSA and you get your volume. So area-based tenure is much the same as you might have heard of woodlots. They're the same. They give you a specific area and you manage forests in those areas. And the stewardship of those community forests is pretty much as similar as any other licensee. You got all your legislative and responsibilities that the government sets, no different than any other 10-year older that might be out there. Some of the beauties, and we'll get into some more of the benefits of the community forest, is it's local. It generates economy and jobs and partnerships locally as opposed to non-locally, and you have some control over those forests. Some examples, I just made this slide up of just some other community forests. CFA stands for Community Forest Agreement. So you get an agreement with the ministry if you get one of those. And you've heard of these ones, I'm sure some of you people, the Lower Thompson, Wells Gray, and the Logan Lake are all within the Counts TSA. And then you have some outlier like Clinton Community Forest, which may or may not be in the TNRD, but I'm not sure. But it's outside the Counts TSA. And then the last three on that slide is the Chinook, Creston, and Chilliwack. And those are examples of regional districts having control or owning a portion. I don't think there's any regional districts that own 100%, but most community forests are in partnerships with municipalities, First Nations, and such like that. And that's kind of a government mandate to lean that way to First Nations partnerships. So those are some of the examples, and most of them have been fairly successful. I know the ones around the Counts area have. I'm not as familiar with the ones outside of there. Jumping right into the segue of First Nations engagement, there is other stakeholders that need to be dealt with and referred to, and those are from fisheries to range tenure holders and water licensees and stuff like that. But the main engagement that needs to be completed is with First Nations, and I think that's a really positive thing. It can strengthen relationships with TNRD and First Nation groups. So there's processes involved, but I think it's a really good idea to reach out if the opportunity arises to reach out to these First Nation groups to build relationships and give them some economic stability and help them out in that way. And it doesn't have to be one First Nation band, it can be groups of band, which is an example of other community forests around the province. Governance and structure. two components of this kind of slide is one is, can a regional district hold a community forest? And from my understanding and looking into it, yes, they can. Where the governance happens on how the TNRD and their partnerships kind of forms their structure, that's kind of up to the legal services department, I think, after the fact. If you were to have a community forest, and there is a number of steps, just to back up, there's this part of the presentation is a TNRD interested or not? Second part, will the government apportion or allocate tenure? And then there's an application process. So if you get to that far and there's a willingness there, most community forest structures are set up with a separate, they're like a separate entity where they'd have their own board of directors, probably someone from TNRD on that board, usually have a manager or a forester managing that, and then hired local people to help out with the consultation and the groundwork and stuff like that. So most community forests are set up in similar structures with variances around them. But there's lots of examples of how governance and structure both could be aligned. Some of the risks, we'll get into some of the risks. Like everything else, there is a certain amount of risks that occur. To me, the end result is, of course, the question is whether the TNRD want to support a move forward on something like this, but there's always risks and things. And majority of the risks are around costs associated. It's not a cheap venture to get into a community forest. From the very start, there's initial planning that goes off. Then if you were invited to apply for a community forest, there's an application process, and it's large. It would probably take a year and $100,000. I'm just throwing numbers out there, so we're not thinking it's going to be $10,000 or something like that. And then once the application is done and you were approved, then there's all the development costs on top of that as well, before you'd turn a revenue. So most of the risks are associated with costs and those being startup costs before revenue can be generated. There is other risks, fire, as we've seen around BC and especially the interior this year are risks, but those risks are associated with any tenure holder in forestry these days. And there's mitigation standards you can do to a certain extent, but there's also mechanisms in place to deal with fire if it does occur, and it is a risk that can occur. But so those are some of the risks and the general ones. Moving on to kind of the benefits, there is some competitive advantages of community forests. We'll get into those. One being they've created a stumpage system, which is basically the taxation. I know some of the panel here have a forestry background, but it's basically the tax you pay to the government. Both community forests and woodlots have an advantage. They only pay 15% of what the major licensees pay. And a lot has to do with just they're smaller in nature, so the fixed costs are higher on those types of things. But one of the main benefits of the having a community forest, it's local. The local governments, municipality, First Nations control that forest resource in a specified land base. And you can create partnerships. So some of the other benefits, because you have control over this forest, you can do other things, whether it be ecosystem restoration, recreation, education, creates local jobs as opposed to non-local jobs. Many benefits. Kind of my last slide here is just what I already talked about: job creation, economic activity, contributions in kind, and there's other things like carbon neutrality and some things around climate change that you can deal with because you have that control. So basically, this presentation was asked the question: should the TNRD should they be invited to apply? Should they want to go ahead with it? And my professional feeling is yes, the benefits greatly outweigh the risks with what can happen in a community with a community forest. And there's prime examples all over the province if there's sound governance. I think that's the end of mine. Any questions? Go ahead.
Thank you. You didn't mention how well the other community forests are doing as far as revenue generating. Are they all in the making money, or are they losing money, or are they breaking even? It's a concern that I would have.
Yeah, as everyone's aware, if you just even read the newspapers, our forest industry is very cyclical in nature. Today, markets are fantastic. They were even better 6 months ago. Doesn't mean in 2 years markets aren't good. Much of the costs dealing with First Nations or dealing with community forests are fairly fixed costs, whether they're harvesting or planting or hauling of the wood. What's the fluctuating portion of the revenue for community forest is what the mills are willing to pay for a log at a certain period of time, and that fluctuates over time. That doesn't answer your question. The answer to your question is, generally speaking, in most cases, community forests do very well if they're managed properly. There's been some examples of some poor management, but I would say overall, if they're properly managed, they do very well. So, and they give back a lot to the community. Logan Lake, for example, has given back probably millions of dollars in the last couple of years to Logan Lake community, just with revenues off the community forest there. And they're in marginal type wood. There is variances between sizes of community forests in the province and how much volume are allocated. So that has a little bearing on it, but generally they all make pretty good revenue. One more quick thing on that is you have 5 years to harvest your volume. You don't have to log it all once, so you can play with markets to a certain extent. You don't have to be totally bound by a poor market condition when you can wait for a better one. To a certain extent, you still have to meet your allowable cut over a given 5-year period.
John, I'm just wondering, we can make reference to this study on page 24. You kind of went through a case scenario with 2 mills. So I think going back to the feasibility study, he's actually gone into more detail in there. He just took a high level approach to this. But again, there's an example of something live in there with regard to the Barrier Community Forest or the North Thompson Community Forest. And again, it gives you an indication of costs. And I think it's a really positive one there.
Yeah, yeah, it generally is. And even in that example that we have in the feasibility report, those were based on selling price of logs of quite low. So those are low compared to today. Doesn't mean in 2 years from now it won't be lower, which it was in 2018. So there is that cyclical nature, but proper planning generally means they're generally positive revenue pretty much all the time. So.
Directors Stamer and Schaefer have questions.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for your presentation, John.
Thanks.
A couple of things. Yeah, I mean, I'm a director on the Lower North Thompson Community Forest, and right after the 2003 fire, there was an opportunity, and you know, in the beginning, it wasn't that great, but I think a really good example of what's going on now, and you're probably very well aware of it, is we keep it pretty simple. And you know, the TNRD, if we were fortunate enough to be able to get a community forest license, I'm sure we can use some of the other examples that have been used in the past with some of the other organizations out there. We don't have to get you know, lost in the bureaucracy. We can certainly, you know, keep it pretty simple. My question to you is, you know, when are we actually going to have an allowable cut that is sustainable in the counts TSA, in as much as that with what's happened last summer and previous summers with the loss of fiber and some of the management things that are going on, how confident are you that we're going to be able to have an opportunity to apply for a license of any size, you know, 15, 20,000 cubic meters, similar to some of the other ones? And the second part of the question would be is, how confident are you that that 2.1 is going to be a static number and it's not going to get significantly changed because of what's occurred in the last couple of years?
Yeah, good questions. And yeah, based on your background, you're very aware of this, what's going on in the counts TSA and not just the counts TSA. To answer the first part of your question, maybe I'm not doing this order, but maybe it's the last part of your question. How confident am I in that the 2.1 million cubic meters will stay where it is? Not very. I don't think it'll stay at that at all. I think in my professional opinion, it's probably too high right now based on 2017. Now that we had these fires, I think they should be relooking at it. That being said, a community forest, because it's an area-based tenure, what happens is they say, okay, if they even apportion or allocate any for the TNRD, we don't know that yet. But let's say they do, they say, okay, here's a certain amount of area. You do a management plan and an inventory on that specific area to come up with what is a sustainable AAC for each year. So that, because it's area-based, you have an advantage there that you should be able to manage your AAC within that given area, irregardless of what's going on in the rest of the TSA. So you can be fairly confident that if you have one, you should be able to get your AC if your management plan is done and your inventory is done correctly. And that is part of the application process. So you know during the application process what area you have and what your average AAC should be over those given years. Did I answer all that?
You did, and just to follow, you're also correct in as much as that you can also assume more responsibility for that area. So similar to North Thompson Community Forest, they were able to not only enhance their reforestation program with, every seedling has to be fertilized, those kinds of things you're aware of. But the other thing is they can also be able to have control of their management programs, and as much as that if they want to do wildfire mitigation, they have way more flexibility in that plan.
I think that's a really good point, because, and I'm not saying anything bad about the major licensees, but there isn't an incentive for them to do incremental type forestry or improve what they're doing, because there's no guarantees there and it's not an area-based tenure. So
Can you explain incremental for people?
well, maybe instead of just logging an area and planting trees and off you go, you might do spacing, you might do fertilization, and it not only maintains that AAC, but it can improve it. Those kind of initiatives really create job creation. You get your money back in those kind of ventures all the time, but there's no really incentive for larger licensees to do those kind of initiatives where you're involved. They're probably doing more of that thing, and you really take care. It's like gardening a little bit more. You really take care of your backyard more with these types of unique tenures, which I think are really unique. So, and getting back to your first question, which I just remembered, I agree. You want to keep it as simple as possible, the structure of them, and utilize what other people have done. And there is some good examples. There also is a community forest association, BC's Community Forest Association. They're a really good, I'm not sure if they're a lobby group, but they're like a group association that has a lot of literature, a lot of help, and the funding from community forests go towards those associations that help out a lot. So yeah, you don't want to reinvent the wheel. You want to do it. And because you're probably, if you were invited and you wanted to go into the application, there would be a partnership of some sort involved, whether municipality, but most likely First Nations group. I think a real clear outline of how that structure is done, because you don't just have the TNRD, you have other interests coming up. So that really needs to get set at the front to not make it too complex and the reporting structure good.
I believe Director Schaefer has a question.
It's not a question, it's just a remark about Clearwater Community Forest has given back millions to the community, which is great. So it is a profitable enterprise.
Thank you. Chair Vernon here. I wanted to just mention the last figures I have for the Clinton Community Forest were from the spring of 2020, and they gave back $250,000 in that 1 year, with $169,000 going to the village of Clinton and 11 different community organizations sharing $87,000 in grants. So that's just an example of one that's fairly close to home. And I believe that someone in Clinton first thought of having a community forest around 2013. And I think the first time they were actually able to disperse funds to the village of Clinton and community groups was 2018. So this just kind of chimes into, the startup costs and the timeline it can be lengthy, but eventually you will get there.
Yeah, great. Thanks for that. The association puts out average stats for each. They compile, whoever wants to put in the report, I think of the 59, 30 or something, put in their kind of expenditures and revenues. So there is some literature there, but not a full sample. But ultimately, I think the the reason for this presentation too is that, you know, we're at the feasibility study report. There hasn't been an allocation yet and then an application. So I think the TNRD board has to keep in mind that if something does go forward, there might have to be kind of fairly quick decision on whether they want to move forward or not, because the application would have to start fairly soon and with some vigilance. So that's kind of the take-home message. Just as a group, just be comfortable with what decision you make, because once you start down that alley, there's a fair amount of expenditures going on.
John, maybe it's worth adding to, and I know we outlined this in the committee report, but the way it's structured in at least one of them that we looked at was they actually took an economic development bylaw, and the way the Local Government Act is set up, and I think I quoted the act in the report, it allows for without going to a formal process of either petition or referendum, it allows the local government just to start taxing. And there's a few services that are like that in the Local Government Act. But again, I think the point I'm trying to make is there isn't a formal process involved like we do with, let's say, a fire department, if we want to go to that, or other type of local government services, the service areas, the small chocolate chips, if you will. So anyways, just an FYI.
Thank you.
Director.
Any more questions for Mr. Childerley? It sounds like there are.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Any idea between Ron and John what kind of money we're looking at? I know, like you said, time is of the essence, particularly if they're making a review and also in knowing that the CAN4 licensing change is going forward right now, as we're all aware of, and some of the changes that are happening with that timber supply agreement. Any idea what kind of money we'd be looking at just in the part of the feasibility and putting it together and getting it to government to be able to make a decent enough presentation and be comfortable in knowing that we've done our very best in trying to put forth a good case on applying for a community forest license? Do you have any idea what we'd be looking at in costs?
I think already done our due diligence to putting it forward towards the ministry.
Mm-hmm.
We did an expression of interest letter, but also we had background support and a number of virtual meetings with the players that be. What happens in the apportionment process is the local ministry folks assemble all the information for the chief forester, and then it goes to chief forester to make the ultimate decision, and they put recommendations. I think, Ron, and maybe I'm speaking for you, but I think there was a really good feeling amongst the ministry people that this would be a worthy thing, but it's ultimately not their decision. They can put recommendations, and there's a lot of other factors going on right now. That could be the fires, the COVID, a lot of things are happening that may change the chief forester's mind. So we don't know where that is, but with respect to cost of putting our best foot forward, that's done. We've already done that. Yeah. Now it's not in our hands anymore right now.
I want to come back to one other point that John made. So when we talked to ministry staff, one thing, and John's already made this point clear, but I just wanted to reemphasize the fact that First Nations reconciliation, many of us already have heard that many of the bands were looking for community forests or forest tenure before we even came on board. My understanding would be, again, they need to be addressed first before we even surface on this one. So there's a good feeling here, yes, but I think at the end of the day, that is the starting point of everything. Once that thing is addressed, then we would be maybe considered for this one.
If I may too, just as a supplement, is that you're right, you're making a good point, Ron, but at the same time, most of our First Nations organizations already either have woodlots, or they have tenure, or they have different programs with fiber already. And that's one of the reasons why SIMP is trying to get the 40,000 cubic meters off the Canfor licenses to enhance what they already have. So we're all in this together. And so there's also economic benefits for them, even if the TNRD does get their own separate community forest license, because as John alluded to, there's a lot of different things that are involved with that license. There's tenuring of the license, there's silviculture, there's all kinds of other economic opportunities that we can also rely on our First Nations partnerships to be able to, be a win-win for all of us. So I think you're right. But if most of the money and most of the work has already been done, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't, as a committee, try to push this forward and make a recommendation to the board.
Director Laird has raised his hand.
Thank you. A question around if we do get approval for a tenure, when do you go out and find partners to assist in some of the costs of putting all the information together? Is that something that's done after the tenure's been allocated, or before, or during, or how does that work?
My feeling is that once the apportionment process is done, if there is anything allocated, I think it would have to start up front to the certain key players in town. And if not, join partnerships, but there has to be a buy-in and some kind of agreement in place that they would get spin-off revenues or something like that. So I think I don't think the government would also, based on their mandate, accept an application and approve one without that being done beforehand. So,
thank you.
And Director Stamer, were you looking for sort of an approximation of the costs of submitting an application for a community forest?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I was just wondering what if somebody asked a question, how much money we'd be looking at to bring it to the next step. That's kind of what I was asking. Yes.
Okay.
Because there is a table in the report, and you have to hyperlink to it from the agenda, table 5.1, which is sort of looking at $84,000 to $126,000 to get it to the stage of a draft management plan incorporating a legal entity. And then after that, if the TNRD is awarded a community forest, I understand from this chart that portion cost approximately $100,000 in 2011. So looking at it 10 years on, I'm guessing you could probably comfortably double or treble that.
Yeah.
So if you click on that link, if you go to the agenda on a computer and click on the link, it's in page 18 of the report.
So the two next big costs associated in the two separate processes. One is the application process. Again, if there was an allocated, if we were invited to apply, there is basically a half-inch manual that you have to follow step by step. So they don't just say create your own. It's pretty much a procedural step-by-step thing with a lot of innovation in there too. So you kind of know what you're doing on the application, and that's awarded. And it's not a pass or fail situation. It's submit your application. Okay, you're lacking in this particular area, you can beef it up. So it's not like this, if you didn't meet it at this date, you're not there. But it is a fair amount of work. When I read through that document, it would take a year in the making to do that. So that's the first cost. And I think $100,000 is probably borderline. It could be more than that. That is also based on the size of area might be allocated to. If you have a 20,000 cubic meter per year cut, you're going to have a certain size land base. If they give you 40,000, you're going to have a larger land base, and there'll be a little more costs on that too, because there's a lot of GIS type work and inventory type stuff that goes in there. So it is dependent somewhat on the size and volume of what would be presented to you. The next component of that is if you've got the application approved, they award you a community forest agreement. Okay, now you're just sitting there without any development or anything like that. So there is development costs. You have to develop, layout, do all your assessments on all the wood, which could take another year to year and a half to even get something approved before you can basically log a stick of timber, which is where all your revenue is coming in from. So it's a few-year process with, I'm going to say between $300,000 to $500,000 of upfront money. And that's an educated guess, depending on a few things. So.
Thank you. Are there any further questions for Mr. Childerley?
Director Laird and Director Stamer have their hands raised.
Okay, Director Laird?
When we spend anywhere between $300,000 and $500,000, what sort of guarantee do you have that you're actually going to get tenure?
Or what after you're going to get tenure?
Yeah, that you're gonna
Well,
get
you
your
wouldn't,
forest.
before the second portion of that, developing the wood and getting it all ready for permit, you'd already have your tenure done by
Okay,
that time.
that's
So
already in place.
That's already in place. You have an
Okay.
agreement with the government. The first part of the application, I'm pretty sure if you're invited to, as long as the application was good, there's a pretty good success rate that would happen. But there's less guarantees with that application process than there is in the development side of things, where if you do your math right, you know, this is what your development costs are, this is what your revenue should be. So that's pretty much a guarantee unless something really bad happens. So.
Thank you.
Okay. Director Stamer?
Thank you, Chair. This isn't a question to John, but a question to Mr. Ray. Where would that money come from in that process if we were going to go down that road? Doug?
As always, a good question. We do have some money in reserves in our general administration, which are quickly dwindling with other needs, but that would be likely where I'd look first.
And this is money over time too. It's not like, you know, you have to spend X number of dollars today. It would be incremental over a 2, maybe 3-year process. So.
Thank you. Any further questions for Mr. Childerley?
No other hands raised.
No. Okay. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Childerley, for being here today.
Thank you.
All right, so we move on to community forest again, part 2, item 6.1, TNRD pursuing a community forest. And we have a recommendation if someone would care to move that.
So moved.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
On the question, all those in, or sorry, all right, so we've got a motion on the floor that we received the report for information. Are there any further questions to Director Story or anyone else?
Sorry, Director Schaefer has her hand raised.
If we receive this for information, what is the next step to bring it to the board?
I think we want to be offered the application to apply for a community forest. So I think once that occurs, if the ministry came back and offered us that next step, then that's where, you know, this is where the board would come in. Or I guess if you're, I think what I'm hearing from Director Stamer is he's thinking of making the motion. If we're offered that, we should move forward on it. If that's what I am thinking, yeah.
Director Stamer, did you want to speak to that?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I agree. I think that we've already spent the time and effort and money to get us this far with Mr. Story's help and Mr. Childerley and everybody else involved. And I think there's no, you know, implication that we're spending more money right now. We're just getting to the next step. So I'm not sure if we want to, you know, accept this for information and then do another motion towards the board. I'm not sure what the committee feels, but I don't know if anybody's in opposition to it. I mean, we've got to this point. This is probably going to be our last opportunity if this is something that we think is necessary for all our communities in the TNRD, because fortunately, some of our communities have been able to see the benefits of a community forest. Some of our communities have not. And this is an opportunity where all the communities in the TNRD could benefit with something like this. And also even just an opportunity in as much as like with the North Thompson Community Forest, within their area, they've done improvements to enhance other things other than just taking timber. I mean, up at Dixon, they put in a nice wharf system. They've been able to have it so that it's better utilized for the lake, for fishing and other recreational activities. There's other things that we can do in that area other than just have it strictly as a revenue generator. There's something that we can be proud of if we get that opportunity.
Thank you. I think it's probably cleanest then to have a vote on the motion that's on the floor right now. And then Director Stamer, if you wanted to advance a separate motion.
Director Elliott has her hand raised.
Director Elliott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I have some trepidation about spending taxpayers' money to go against people who are already in the business. And the fact that the TNRD has got 10 electoral areas that I don't see where we are going to benefit from this. So I'd like, I guess, more information. I can understand Barrier, I can understand Clinton, all of those, because it's within the area of their own communities. But we, the 10 of us, are gonna have to start dividing it out as to what's gonna happen. So I'd like to know where this is going to go.
Okay, thank you. Just a clarification about Clinton. The Clinton Community Forest is not within the municipality or the village of Clinton. It is outside municipal boundaries.
Oh, yes, I understand that, but the revenue goes to the community.
So I would see, and correct me if I'm wrong, Director Story, the money as a whole, regardless of where this might be located within the TNRD, would be coming back to the TNRD as a whole. If the community forest was, say, I'm just going to throw it there somewhere in area I, the revenue would not be going back to area I, it would be going back to the entire TNRD.
I agree. So I think maybe as an example, the TNRD would be one stakeholder, and there could be a number of First Nations that would be another number of stakeholders. So when the revenues come in, they're all split up and tallied amongst all those stakeholders in cost share agreements. That's the way I think it works. So it's a very positive opportunity if you look at it that way.
Director Stamer and Director Schaefer have raised their hands.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. And just to be clear, the Lower North Thompson Community Forest is from Vinsula to Littlefort. The municipality district of Barrier has no input whatsoever in what the community forest does, who it allocates its funds to. And having said that, my point is that, for example, like the community forest just provided a grant for $100,000 to SIMP in their resource end of things because they wanted to put together a Rapattack truck. They're not even involved in our community forest, but they are a strategic partner in as much as that we have had people from their First Nations work with us. We've done different projects with them. And so there's nothing written in stone that we have to do anything for them. But that was something that we thought was beneficial to the valley. So going forward, if the TNRD has a community forest and it is something that's manageable, like 20,000 cubic meters is something that you can actually, make some money off of, then all of the regions of the TNRD would benefit, not just wherever it's located. And again, I was trying to emphasize, and I think John was backing me up, is that we don't have to reinvent the wheel here. So we can piggyback a lot of these things with the other things that are going on. The Lower North Thompson Community Forest has one full-time employee. They have an RPF that basically runs it all with the help of the board and a part-time secretary. That's it. So if we had the same kind of an we don't need 10 people to be running the same size of community forest. We don't need that. And in that time, not only have we been able to put millions back into the communities, we've also been able to develop a mill site. We're doing value-added products as well. And the other thing is, and John didn't say too much about it, alluded to it, was the fact that because the community forest is in charge and responsible for the enhancement and the recreation and the reforestation of those blocks, because of some of the innovative things that they've done, those blocks are getting to the point where they're going to be harvested that much quicker. And a lot of the stewardship money that they had to put aside for those responsibilities are going to now be able to come back and even put more money back into those communities. So that example of Clinton in 5 years is impressive, because it took a lot more than 5 years to get any money out of the Lower North Thompson Community Forest to come back into our community. So that just shows that community forests have evolved. And when you're only paying 15% of the stumpage, there's a lot of money to go around if it's done properly. So that's one of the reasons why I'm excited about this opportunity, is that it's good for the entire TNRD.
Thank you. And just to add to that quickly, I know Director Schaefer, you're waiting. Something that, again, we heard a bit about in the talk around Logan Lake and their community forest with the wildfires. was the stewardship portion of it, and the fact that the community forests are able to go in there and actually manage the fuel loads, do the fuel management to reduce the fire risk in that area, which I think is something that is an aspect of community forest that maybe was not given as much airplay as it should have, because the focus is, you know, understandably on the economic development aspects of it. But this fire season, I think, has shown us the one of the many major benefits of a community forest in protection and safety. Director Schaefer.
I'd just like to ask the question, if we're going to partnership with other people like First Nations or whatever, are they going to be in on the costs as well, or just the profit?
No, I think they would share costs and profit. Yeah.
All right, are there any other comments on the motion, which is that we receive the report for information?
No hands are raised.
All right, so I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried, and I would entertain a separate motion. I believe you might have one, Director Stamer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to make a motion that we do follow the recommendation of Mr. Story and get go through the process. Go through the process of applying for a community forest license for the TNRD and allowing staff to be able to go through that process. And then once we get to that point, then we can bring it back after the board. Of course, this is a recommendation to the board, but then we could get to the next step on.
Yeah, Chair, if I may, and I like where you're going with this, but I think the only difference might be the ministry will come to us to offer the application.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
So what would you
go
like? What would you like me to say on the motion? Mr. Story.
No, I wasn't trying to.
No,
be there.
I'm not. I'm just asking for guidance because I mean, I'd like us to be able to bring this to the board's attention as quickly as we can, knowing that we have a very short window of opportunity and all that hard work that you guys have done in the process. We don't want that to, you know, fall by the wayside.
Something to the effect that if the ministry provides us with the opportunity to apply, that the TNRD apply for the community forest application.
Well said. Thank you.
All right, so the motion is that if we are approached and offered the opportunity to have a license, that we instruct staff to move ahead with that. So that is moved. Do I have a seconder?
I'll second.
Second, thank you. All right, any discussion on this particular motion?
Director Laird has his hand raised.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. When would this go before the board for approval? Especially when you're getting into the money aspect of it? Like when the provincial government offers us a tenure, that's when I go to the board to approve whether you go forward with a tenure application. And that's when the whole board would make a decision on how the funding works.
Yep. Yeah, so I think let's say the ministry came to us tomorrow and said, you know, we'd like you to apply based on a letter of intent. I think at that point, then we start getting our ducks in a row, and that's when it would happen. So we would make the resolution now, but if and when that opportunity comes, then you'd start getting your ducks in a row, so to speak. Yeah.
Thank you. That answers my question.
Director Rothenberger has his hand raised.
Director Rothenberger.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just trying to be clear as to the advantage of Director Stamer's motion. It almost seems like jumping the gun a little bit, because one thing is going to happen anyway, or may happen. You know, if we're approached about making an application, wouldn't that simply be the time to take it to the board and then make that decision, rather than trying to get ahead of what's actually happening? Maybe I'm just not getting it.
Madam Chair, I'm just wondering if what we're doing is actually we're bringing the board into the process of actually making that application to the ministry, because we haven't done that yet. Correct, Mr. Story?
We've,
You've had preliminary stuff, but you haven't actually done that, have you?
we haven't done it. We
No,
haven't.
so this is the process of actually making that application.
No, we've already put the intent in. So if moving forward, once the apportionment is done and there's a room for a CFAs or woodlots, then they would come to us and ask us if we are interested in that. So I can see what Director Rothenberger is saying too.
So what you're saying is so excuse me. So what you're saying is the motion is really not necessary until they get back to us?
I think it just shows the board that we would like to move forward with this initiative if it comes forward to us from Flinro or the ministry. Yeah, I guess that's the only difference.
Could these occur concurrently? Because we have heard that time is of the essence, that it is a lengthy process to start with. Once if we are approached by the ministry and offered the chance for a tenure, starting to get those ducks in a row is crucial. So if we were to go ahead with Director Stamer's motion, then that would just get us a little bit of a jump start. It could then go to the board at the next meeting, because of course, with the timetable of the board, depending on the processes, it could be several weeks before there is a board meeting to go to say, look, this is the offer.
Yeah, I think everybody is kind of nodding their heads here. Yeah.
Okay, good. I can't see that. So going, I think, Director Rothenberger, this just means that if we do get the phone call or the telegram or whatever Flinrod sends out, then staff can immediately get moving on this without having to wait for further board approval.
Yes. Yep.
I heard a yes.
That's correct. Yeah.
Excellent. Are there any other questions? I see Director Schaefer with her hand up.
I'd just like to know if to reread the motion, because what you're saying, I don't think was in the motion, and I think it should be there.
So the motion, as we understand it, if the ministry approaches the TNRD with approval to apply for a community forest, that it be brought, the recommendation to the board would be that we would apply at that time for the community forest application.
Okay. Does that satisfy you, Director Schaefer?
That's what I was looking for.
Okay, perfect. Is there any further discussion?
No hands are raised.
No hands are raised. All right, on the question then, all those in favor? Any opposed?
Director Rothenberger has raised his hand as opposed.
And the motion is carried. Thank you.
Just to note that Director Elliott has also raised her hand as opposed.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. Item 6.2, TNRD Regional Highway entrance signage feasibility. We again have a staff recommendation. Would someone care to move that recommendation?
Chair, I think we talked about me going through my PowerPoint today first.
Oh, okay, right. Yes, sorry. Yes, we have a special bonus presentation, PowerPoint. Director Story is going to give us some concrete examples which might make things clearer from the report. So take it away.
Thank you. So again, as I alluded to before in our last committee meeting, I think we had some concrete examples of what we wanted to follow up with. And sorry, Dave, what's going on here? Okay, there we go. So what I wanted to discuss today was what the locations of potential sites could be in order to get the best dollar value for the sign. The differences between freeways and highways. At the last ECDEV meeting, there was definitely a number of director preferences that were thrown on the table. So we did some research on those. There was some preferences that had to do with sign designs. We came back with, we're coming back now with some more budget information. Director Rothenberger asked us to discuss some survey information that we've have moved forward with all the regional districts. And then we can kind of get a committee direction on where to go. So first thing is the locations for the signs. So this hasn't deviated from the first committee report. But what I have done is, in order to maybe give it a bit more context, you'll notice up there that we've shown 9 locations. And of the 9, we've got 5 of them, we've got 5 highlighted. And so I just wanted to go through them. So Highway 1 is Kanakabar. The second one is Highway 97 North at 70 Mile. We're looking at Highway number 5, the Coke, Highway 97 connector at Panas Summit over by the RDOS, Regional District of Okanagan, Similkameen, and Highway 97 between Kamloops and Vernon over by Westwold. So I got to thinking, in speaking to some of our ministry colleagues, the best way to portray this. So actually, CEO Hildenberg had sent me a bunch of, he may not remember this, but I'm sure it was him. He sent me a bunch of Google shots from before. And I'm just going to show you a couple of them, but I want them to be put into context of ministry policy. So this is the Coke on Highway 5. And you'll notice that there's, although the center lane's gone in the winter, there's actually, it's a divided highway that's one step higher than another in many places, but it's basically got a dividing route that if you drove into it, you either might end up in the Tules and you wouldn't get out, or you might end up over on the other side, depending on what happens. My point being, this is a freeway, and I'm going to go back to that last slide. Welcome signs are not permitted on freeways as the Ministry of Rec stands. So basically they're telling us you can't put a sign on a freeway. So back to this slide, the Coke's off the list because it is a freeway. It's a divided highway that meets that definition. And I did check with them because I thought, well, what does a freeway mean? This is a freeway. Another one, the Okanagan connector, and I don't know if how many people travel this one, but this is that one. And unfortunately, did I turn this around? I got to think here. I think I'm looking towards Kelowna, and this shot should be the other way. It doesn't matter. Still, you get the picture. Again, it's 2 lanes, one going in this case, I guess it would be east and west, and you have that divided center line. This is a freeway, so we're hooped on this one too. Okay, so now let's go back to what's left, and I wanted to go through all 9 of them so you get an idea. So this is not a freeway. This is a multi-lane highway, and this is the BC Vernon 97 highway between Falkland and Westwold. And again, I couldn't move the Google shot over to the right, but you can see, or you probably will realize, or you may realize that obviously the highway drops down to the right. Could we put a sign here? Yep, we definitely could. However, I do want to point out that the ministry also stipulates that you'd have to put a sign a minimum of 15 meters off the outermost lane. Okay, so again, let's just say where the white line is their definition of the lane. And again, do I have a pointer here, Dave? Sorry.
Yeah.
This top button here. Okay. Right there. And sorry, Chair, I know you can't see this. You see the telephone pole?
Yeah.
White line to the right of the telephone pole. Let's just say that's it. It would go 50 meters from there, which is okay. That's a wee bit of a distance, but that's what the rules are based on the size of the sign that we would be putting up. Okay, so it's possible, and however, in this case, it's on the wrong side. It should have been on the other side. I was just pointing out the white line because it's easy to explain that way.
Madam Chair, I have a question if I can. Ron, are we allowed to add height? So if, let's say, for example, that was going to be where we put the sign and it's in a lower area, are we allowed to raise that up away from the highway so that the sign isn't in a hole? Will they allow us to do that so that we're the same height as the road? Will they allow us to do that?
That's a good question because let me get to that. Can I come back? And if I forget, just give me a pound here. Okay, so the Vernon Highway one, it's pretty clear, except we'd be over on the other side of the highway. And Director, oh goodness, Chair.
Roden.
Yeah, you've got the PowerPoint open right now, right?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so we're on the, I'm going to go to the next slide, which is the Lytton Trans-Canada one.
Yes.
Okay, so again, this is the same deal. We're going to be going 15 meters from the white line over, which may put us into the trees. And it all depends on where the right-of-way is that Ministry of Transport has. So technically, when I was talking to them, they kept on telling me, you know what, don't put it in Ministry right-of-way. If you can, put it on Crown land. I know that Ministry right-of-way is Crown land, but it's a different kind of Crown land. Or go to private. Okay, so just keep that one in mind just for a minute. Okay, so again, looks pretty level. There'd be having to be some tree removal there, you know, give or take. Let's just say, okay, that's a possibility. Caribou Highway. Again, nice big right-of-way from the white line over to the right, 15 meters. Yep, it could be done. And again, I've taken the spots where our best guess based on Google Earth and the GIS lines showing the differences between the regional districts is. So again, yeah, is it possible? Sure, anything's possible here. Again, 15 meters to the right based on the size of the sign that we have. And again, if it's a smaller sign, there's a lesser setback. If it's a larger sign, it's a greater setback. Whoops. Here we go. Highway 24. So this was not on Ron's pick list for obvious reasons. It's narrow. It's got a not so nice downside on the right-hand side. Again, I think it's a good ask about can you raise it up? Anything's possible, and I think a lot of that costs money. But again, the narrow lane here, you would still have to go 15 meters to the right of the white line, either white line. So again, is it possible? Yep. Is it going to be off the driving right away? Quite a bit, I think. Yeah. This is the Pavilion Highway. Now, in that case, yikes. You're entering the TNRD going to the east. You're going to be in the river. Is it an ideal location? It's not a straight center line. And remember, all of these applications would have to be approved by the ministry. Could it be moved further down the highway in a straighter spot? Possibly, but I didn't see anything close by that would really give you a friendly, fuzzy feeling that, that you are going into TNRD jurisdiction. And this is one that you're familiar with, Shuswap Lake, over on the right-hand side. I don't think here we'd even make 15 meters, or it would be pretty darn close. We'd probably be putting it in fish habitat. So again, just saying, this wasn't one of my top picks either, because again, I'm not sure. When I had the first five, I figured I'm not so sure this is going to give us a whole lot of buying power. The Yellowhead south towards Blue River. Yep, very clear right of way. You're going to be off slope quite a bit on a higher berm. Again, just giving you an idea of where these signs would go if we were going to do this. Okay, so let's just leave that one for a minute. And Director Stainer, I'm still going to answer your question, but I'm going to do it in a roundabout way. So in the last meeting that we have, there were a number of asks by different directors, and sorry, my slide's not very clear here. I should have made it bigger. So the preferences, there were 8 of you. I made a point of saying, what's the upright material that most of you would like to see? Most of you said a rock substrate. 5 of you said out of 8 that they'd like the rock. 2 said wood, 1 said metal. Do we keep the region of BC's best? 5 said yes, 3 said without. No, we don't want it. Do we keep the or do we add the welcome to? So in our first round, renditions of that committee meeting before, the answer was, did we include the welcome to? We had them on all the signs, and or no, we didn't have them on any of the signs. You, all 8 of you said, put the welcome to the TNRD on there. The roof option was thrown out too. 5 said with, 3 said without, and then including Thompson-Nicola in there. 5 said keep it, and 2 said skip it. So let me just show you what that means. So first of all, the rock substrate. The sign on the left is showing you the example of the rock substrate that most of you, I think this is kind of what you envision. So Mr. Coulter from communications mocked this one up, and that's what that rock substrate looks like. The region of BC's best. There is the sign on the right in the blue with the region of BC's best below. Okay, everybody, or I shouldn't say that. 5 of you said they liked that, and 3 said do without it. So again, most of our mocks here were without, but again, I threw it on there to give you an indication of what it looks like. Include the welcome to. Everybody said yes. So there you go. Welcome to, welcome to. Different script, and then we left one without. And then the other one was roof option. Director Stamer, I think, offered up the roof option. Now we kind of took some artistic freedoms on this one. That was the one that was mocked out based on kind of a design that Barrier was using, I think, if memory serves me. It only, my feeling is it only works with wood. So I'm just saying, there you go. And then the last option was Thompson-Nicola. Keep it or skip it. So the Thompson-Nicola, the one I think that we were talking about was, we included the brand TNRD. And you'll see on the one on the left, we took it out, and all the other ones, we've kept them. So again, there's a lot happening here. I know I know but these are what the preferences were. Okay, so then let's skip over to budgets just for a sec. So the brick, metal, and wood, those are the uprights. I'm just giving you a ballpark cost on per unit sign. So in other words, I called the brick one, whoops, this bad boy right here. So the rock I'm calling brick, it's going to run about $5,000 to do it up to about 8 feet tall, okay, give or take. The wood ones is going to run around 6,500. Now that particular one's going to probably run more because there's a lot happening there. But on that simple wood one, and again, you got to remember there's going to be some engineering here. These bad boys are going to be down in the ground quite a ways. So even though they may look like they're 8 foot tall, they may be taller, and they may be engineered to a cement base in a particular fashion that you can't see. Oops. And just going back here again. So that's with the brick, metal, wood. The engineering, got a quote from one of our locals here. He was estimating about 2,000 a sign. That's if we go on MOT property. And again, I don't think it's a bad idea to do engineering, because like if any of these things ever flew off and like ended up in someone's front shield, that's the last thing you need. And we've already, Director Elliott actually can remember, we've already had one blown down over by Savinaw. Fortunately, it stayed where it was in the road right away, but it would have been ugly otherwise. The panel itself runs for that panel size, and we were using, we mocked it up, I believe it was to 8 by 12 foot. We're going around 1,500s. Obviously, if you get bigger, we're going to go bigger in price. I didn't put any labor costs in here, and in the last discussion, we didn't really mention maintenance, but again, I just wanted to throw out, it's going to be variable. My colleague Sherry has done a number of these signs before. The Wells Grey Country signs, some of you may be familiar with, as you leave Little Fort and enter the river corner there, they've got some different costs involved over the years for upgrade. Some of them run as high as 10,000. Like, wood is hard to treat. And, you can't leave these things looking shabby, or else, it's going to be reflective. And also reflective materials, LED lights in that, it's not an option on MOT right away. So again, just an aside. The other thing that's worth just thinking about here is, and I want to come back to the question around rock, and this will kind of answer Director Stamer's question. With regard to the rock, if you don't have breakaway options, so again, I on the wood, usually you drill about a one to a 1.5 inch hole. Those units right there would be 10 foot or 10 foot, let's say, wood uprights. But in the wood uprights, you drill about 3 holes that are about 1.5 inches each, and that's called a breakaway. So if a car drives into the wood, it will just shear right off. Okay. Again, it's all about driver safety. The steel would have a similar concept on an engineered base, where if you hit that, or aluminum, where if you'd hit that, that same thing would happen. Now, the brick, it's a little different in that you can't shear brick. So the ministry would make us build a berm, and they actually also talked about lanes to actually keep the car or vehicle from heading towards that sign. That's what would be required. Again, the berm, the lane, it's going to go with more money. And to answer Director Stamer's question, I don't think there's anything that says you can't raise it up, because the Wells Gray sign is a good example. As you leave Little Fort and enter towards Clearwater, they've raised that up in a berm to the point, I think, where they don't want that vehicle to smash and people kill themselves. So again, there's still a few unknowns around this one. Back to Director Rothenberg's question from the last meeting. So we actually put the survey out. There's 28 regional districts. We had 11 regional districts respond to us where they didn't have entrance signs. 9 reported that they did. They also suggested that regional district signage, increased boundary recognition, education and awareness, heritage or cultural resource recognition, like branding this year during the fires. I don't know if that's the kind of branding you want, but okay, it's there. Could be a tourism recognition. Anyways, it's one of those tourism things. And then increased brand recognition. So again, certainly it does do that, but the comments from staff that we received back specifically mentioned you got a budget for sign maintenance, and clearly those numbers are, I think in most people's mind, we often forget those, but they're not a forgettable item. And you want to choose low maintenance material. So again, we talked about that before. So the question, and Director Stamer, did I answer your question? Sure. Okay. So I think the answer was yes, depending on, I guess what the engineering is going to tell us. But basically, a few things here. First of all, what would the highway locations be that you want us to consider? I'm just going to go back here and remind you that the Kanaka Bar area on Highway 1, it's open, it's fair game. Highway 97 North, it's fair game. And not that Highway 24 is not a good option, but it's got some limitations with respect to Prism. The Highway 5 Coquihalla, the Freeway 1 off the board. The Panas Summit Connector off the board. Highway 97 between Kamloops and Vernon could be an option, although the downside is it does drop down to the side where I was looking at Google Earth. The one in Chase, if you want to fish on that one, yeah, for sure. North of Blue River, are you going to get your bang for your buck? I don't know. And Highway 99 near going towards Highway 97, I would also offer up that I don't know if that's best value for your money. It's not a well-traveled road. It's well-traveled, but it's not, I don't know if it's the kind of recognition you were looking for. Okay, so just throwing that out there.
You had it part of the Blue River. You realize that Alberta is where the regional district starts, right?
So that's another 45 miles north of Blue River.
Alberta, yep.
Yeah.
It's not in Alberta, but yep.
I said Alberta.
Oh, okay.
Alberta. So if you have a sign stuck way up there, you're only 13 miles from Valemount.
Yep.
So I thinking that I'm not sure that we'll get a bang for our buck.
That's what I was saying.
In
Director
that,
Elliott.
although the highway is now a lot more traveled than it was.
Yep.
But I think they all need to be on where the regional district starts, like right on where our property lines are, whatever you call it.
And all those pictures were of where our property lines start. My guess is between 10 meters. I'm probably within 10 meters of where they start.
Okay.
So that line here would go the right way. That line there is within about 10 meters of where that's the Alberta border boundary between Fraser Fort George and TNRD. And again, I agree with you. I think I agree with you. I think we're not going to get best bang for a dollar there. That would be my guess.
Director Schaefer and Director Rothenberger have their hands raised.
I've got a few questions. North of Blue River, how come you say you're not going to get your bang for your buck, because that is a very busy highway?
I was looking at probably the more traveled, what I thought to be the more traveled corridors. That would be my best guess. And
it is
again,
a very much traveled corridor.
Okay.
Very much.
Okay.
Increasing every day.
Okay.
And Highway 24.
Mm-hmm.
Can we not put it? I don't know what. Can we not put it across from the Caribou one? They're saying leaving, and you can say entering.
Definitely, we could if the ministry would permit us, because we're going to likely be on the right of way. But I haven't researched that, so there's still a bunch of stuff to be researched on these things.
Okay, and the sign, is it going to be the panel? Is it going to be wood or metal?
And I think you're ahead of me here as usual. I was getting to that because you folks have to give me some direction on what the substrate would be if you even want to do this.
Yeah, because metal to me would be better than wood.
Yeah.
This last question is, when we're talking about the brick, instead of doing just straight brick, you can build a form and then put the brick on it. It'll be a lot lighter.
Again, it's all at the whim of the engineer. So however the engineer tells us to make the sign, that's what we do if we're in a ministry right away. But I still think the engineering is important, and they would have to address how the sign's built.
Because then it's just not all the way through, and if somebody hits it, however.
Again, you have to remember, it's the MOT that ultimately decides what's going to happen or what's not going to happen.
In the North Thompson, it'll be a truck that hits it.
There you go. So it won't matter.
So
then.
you know. Yeah. We have four accidents a day pretty well, so get in there. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Director Rothenberger.
Thanks. So in answer to your question, Mr. Story, I think obviously we want high traffic areas. And I'm wondering if those numbers are not readily available for traffic volume at certain points, and that would give us a comparison among them. And then secondly, feasibility of the site, because it should be very close to the boundary.
Yep.
And it looks like we're probably down to maybe 4 of your or so on your list that are even actually practical. Not a large number anyway, so that whittles it down further. And my other question is, and I thought of this, and Director Schaefer alluded to it as well, but when I was looking at your map, just as it came up here today, I hadn't thought of it before, but can these signs do double duty, such as having, can they be two-sided? And on the other side, say you're now leaving the TNRD, thanks for coming, something like that, because there wouldn't be any additional installation per se, just creation of another side of the sign for opposite.
Certainly.
That would maybe complicate things site-wise, because some locations wouldn't lend themselves to that, I guess. Depending, we know how you have to orient
Yeah.
the sign and so on, but
Yeah.
have you considered that at all? 'Cause it wouldn't add to the expense much.
Yeah, and a good example of that would be the Wells Gray sign just north of Little Fort. So, yeah, it's got a welcome, yeah, it's both on both sides. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Director Stamer has raised his hand.
Okay, Director Stamer?
Yeah, thank you. Couple of things. First of all, Ron, have you thought about and to add to Director Rothenberger, in as much as on a couple of these locations, couldn't we put it on the other side of the road? Does it have to be on the driver's side?
I thought about that, but I don't know. I was
Especially if it's elevated.
I know the way I drive. When I look over to the left, I end up going over to the left, which isn't a good thing because I'm a newfie. But I don't know about people from BC if they drive like me.
I'm just wondering if we end up having an issue with locations, that may be an option, even though we're looking at probably like $10,000 a sign is probably in our ballpark, maybe a bit more.
I've never seen one like that though.
That doesn't mean that, especially if we're gonna if we end up putting the leaving on that, then it would be on the right side. So leaving's on the right side and coming in isn't, but I'm just throwing that out there.
Fair enough. Yeah.
The other thing is that with I was like looking at some of the locations, it didn't really lend itself as much to brick as the wood. But if we're gonna be elevating it and we're also looking at long-term costs, it makes the most sense to me.
Wood.
And yeah. Well, no, the brick, in as much as it's gonna last longer. But one of the things that I liked was looking at the 4 pictures. I like the look of the sign that says, "Welcome to the Thompson-Nicola Regional District," the one on the right. But put that sign on the brick. So I know you don't have the capacity of seeing what it would look like, but that's what I thought. I like that sign more than the white sign.
Okay.
I don't like the white sign very much.
Yep.
But if we could, if the majority like that sign on the brick, I wonder what that looks like.
And again, I'm coming to that one. That one is a committee decision or even wider. I don't know if you want the board.
But we're probably looking at about $10,000 a sign approximately.
Well,
or that's gonna.
Yeah, so you're right. I'd say 6,000 basically for the sides. Another 2 for engineering brings us to 8. The panel is about 95 now, but what wasn't included was labor and again, the maintenance costs. And again, site variability. So if you build up the site or if you go with rock or brick, obviously that they're gonna create a berm or veering lanes. So yes, easily 10,000 per sign. Without a doubt.
If I may, is there an opportunity to, as we've seen, some of the locations may not be perfect, where we'd be in a position where we could pick 4 or 5 that we're comfortable with, and then going forward, whether it's next year or the year after, we could add to that as well.
Anything's possible. Yeah.
So instead of trying to make sure that we've got everywhere set up, we could identify the 3 or 4 that are the main ones, and then we could transition to.
Sorry.
Yeah, so there were a couple of other considerations that I just wanted to throw out just to make sure everybody's aware. So again, we'd be looking for, do we have the sign on private property, Crown or MOT? Obviously, for the most part, when I've looked at Tempest, which is our mapping system, it's either on Crown or Ministry right away. The one over by Vernon would be potentially private land, but then you're pretty far off the right of way. So again, you'd have to be doing some investigation on what the right of way is or what the Crown land or private land prospects would be. The panel conceptualization, as per Director Stamer's comment there, again, I think we need a consensus on what it is you like or don't like. The panel supports, again, same thing, brick, wood or metal. What do you like or don't like? And then the other thing is based on, we'd also need to get a beat on the overall budget in order to move forward with this. The only other thing that I want to throw out is back to the survey comments here. I think it's worth noting that, okay, there's 28 regional districts, 11 said they had them. But again, I don't see a lot of these. I've seen the Fraser Fort George one, the Caribou Regional District one. I guess, you know, when Director Rothenberger kind of started this question off, why are we doing this? I'm not seeing a whole lot of why are we doing this here. So again, I just wanted to make it very clear that there are 28 of us. There's only 11 responses here. And again, I've seen the small ministry signs that say Thompson-Nicola Regional District. That's usually the case, or it's very often the case, that separate one regional district from another. Not to say we can't do this, but I'm just throwing it back, you know, from that original question. What is it you look to gain here?
Thank you, Director Story. And I just, I'd like to just say that I am one of the directors who raised this question at the strategic planning session. Why didn't we have signs? I thought maybe it might be some historical thing. It turns out that it has been discussed before. And I feel that there is no harm in saying that I have considered the facts, I've read the reports, I've talked to Director Story, and I have asked myself the question that Director Rothenberger asked, which is, why are we doing this? And I never for a moment thought that it would be a question of 3 people in a pickup truck going around and pounding some signs in the ground and calling it a day. I've certainly had my eyes opened as to the full extent. Just something as simple as the design that I think is most attractive, which is the brick stone one, is the one that is going to cost us the most money in terms of berms or runaway lanes. And my thinking is that if you're thinking about having to build a runaway lane because of a sign, why exactly are we doing this? And I keep coming back to the education thing, which is something that I've seen a lot of need for, particularly over the last 3 months. And I scribbled down on my agenda here that looking at the signs, if you factor in everything, we're probably looking at around $20,000 plus a sign just to design and install them, not to mention the maintenance. And 2 of the main routes are already off the table permanently. And so we're looking at 6 figures. And could that 6 figures not be spent in better ways if education and awareness of the TNRD is the purpose? I'm conscious of the fact that staff has put a lot of time into this. I really appreciate the time. I appreciate the information. My own feeling is that, thanks very much. I would not be comfortable directing staff to continue down this road at this particular time. Hello?
Sorry, Director Rothenberger has his hand raised.
Okay, Director Rothenberger, I thought I'd stunned you all into silence or something. Director Rothenberger.
Well, I'm not quite ready to reject the concept entirely, because I don't think we can talk about budget until we know how many signs we're talking about, for one thing, and what the initial expense might be. Another comment that, and so to do that, we have some more studying to do, I think, a little bit anyway. My favorite one is the stone or the brick. My favorite sign is the lower right-hand blue one, which includes the region of BC's best. In fact, that's probably my favorite overall due to cost and other considerations. And with respect to wood, yeah, eventually have to be replaced. But I mean, a fence post lasts about 20 years, so it's not going to happen that often, because you're going to, you know, dump it in the ground and put lots of creosote on it and everything. And on an annual basis, you probably have to slap a coat of stain and sealer on it. That's not huge maintenance. You know, and then you reach the point where it has deteriorated to be unsightly, and then you deal with it. But I don't think that's a big impediment. Obviously, we're not going to be building berms and runaway lanes for a welcome to TNRD sign. Or I think that's obvious anyway. So we're kind of left with the wood at any rate.
Director Schaefer has her hand raised.
Director Schaefer?
I prefer the brick sign myself, and I would like to see them come to fruition, because I know our sign at Wells Gray Country, we've only got a little insignia of the TNRD, and nobody knows what TNRD means when they're driving. It would be nice to say, welcome to the Thompson-Nicola Regional District, and still have the insignia, and then people will know where they are. Because I like to see where I am too. I mean, I like the sign we've got. It's stone, and we had to do some maintenance on it and it costs quite a bit to repaint it. But I think if we can keep it simple with stone, I think it's great and it should go up there so we can be recognized for who we are. Because try recognizing us any other way, by talking to people and stuff, you get bad reviews.
Director Elliott has her hand raised.
Director Elliott.
Thank you. I also like the stone and I like the blue sign because I think white at night is really hard on a driver. I also think it's time that we were recognized amongst the province. We've got a big regional district and we do some pretty good things in this regional district. So even if we started out with 5 at the strategic points of coming into the regional district, I don't have a problem with that. I think we should do something to recognize, have people recognize they're coming into the regional district.
Director Laird has his hand raised.
Director Laird.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I feel the same, that we need to get recognition up on the highways. And if we do only get to 4 or 5, where they're the probably the easiest and best viewed, I think is a step in the right direction. And we'll put those up and see how we can move forward with the more locations. And I do prefer the stone and I do prefer the blue, and region of BC's best. Thank you.
Okay. So if we look at the committee direction sign, Director Story is looking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 points. So if it is the will of the committee that we move forward or instruct staff to move forward, the first one is highway locations the committee wants staff to pursue. Do we want to settle on 3 or 4 locations, 5 locations, how many and where?
Director Elliott has raised her hand.
Director Elliott.
What we need for recognition is one coming out of the lower mainland for sure. Now, whether that is at Hope, obviously it's going to have to be somewhere there if we can't go on the Coquihalla. One coming out of the Okanagan, for simply the Okanagan has lots of signs. They need to know they're leaving there and coming into our good area. Squamish, somewhere around leaving the Squamish regional district, which puts it on Highway 97, Ron?
99.
99?
That's the one that'll be in the lake.
Well, I'm sure that it's not all in the lake, or there'll be some place there that's, but in that general area would be my suggestion. And also one coming from the north. We have a lot of Alberta people that travel that highway in the wintertime. No, they ski, they snowmobile, they do many, many things coming down that highway. I think that's a priority. And that's only 4, so somebody else can add the 5.
Well, I mean, personally, if we're going to go with locations, I mean, I look at the pavilion sign along Highway 99. If we want to have it near the boundary of the SLRD, then we've got a lake to contend with. And it's a fairly long lake in terms of where the boundaries meet. So, I mean, if we're going to move ahead and recommend 3, then I'd say then Highway 1 near Lytton, one of the ones out of the Okanagan that is not ruled out because it's a freeway, and then Highway 97, the Caribou Highway, so up 70 mile-ish, as getting bang for our buck on those 3 signs, and then possibly do it 3 signs and then 4, because we're looking at a total of 7 that we can do.
Thank you. Did you mention one up the North Thompson? I didn't quite get whether you got.
North Thompson? No one had met, like around Abrida.
Going up Highway 5, yeah. Yeah, okay. The other thing is we didn't discuss whether we have a 2-sided sign, welcome to and leaving Like you could have the both on one on one side and one on the other.
Director Story, I think you said that would probably not lead to a significant increase in cost because the sign's already there.
Yep, could look into that for sure. Sorry about that. Thanks, Dave.
Okay.
Director Schaefer has raised her hand.
Schaefer?
Did we not say Highway 1 east of Chase? Because that's coming into the district as well, isn't it? Did we mention that already?
We talked about it, but the sight lines are problematic there, as they are on 99.
So one of my reasons for discounting Highway 99 Pavilion with the border with SLRD at the moment is because that is one of the problematic ones. And why set ourselves up by picking the difficult ones? I think Highway 1, something out of the Okanagan, Highway 97 in the Caribou, and then if we want to add Highway 5 up near Abrita, that would be 4, none of which have lakes or difficulties to contend with, or not massive ones anyway.
Director Stamer has raised his hand.
Director Stamer?
Thank you. The one on east of Chase, is there any reason why we can't have the location a little bit closer to Chase, Ron? Like, I see you took a picture, it was right down by the lake, but isn't there anything as we get closer to where you're starting to pull that hill, or is there anything else a little bit closer?
We can certainly move it up, but again, I think, look, we're gonna have to look at the right of way or Crown land. Again, it would be a ministry permitting thing.
Because I mean, that's an important throughway.
Sure.
I mean, you're talking about traffic coming into the province. I mean, that's a major throughway for that. So I would think that hopefully we could work one there. Does that make 5?
That's 5, yep. Yellowhead, Lytton, Westwold, 70 Mile, and Chase. Yep.
Director Elliott has raised.
Director Elliott?
Madam Chair, do you want us to make a motion?
Well, I think we're just trying to right now figure out, based on what Director Story presented to us, the answers to his questions on his slide panel, the committee direction, which is the locations that we want staff to pursue. Should it be on private property, Crown or MOT right of way? What panel conceptualization we recommend, which material we prefer, and an overall budget.
Well, I think we've got the 3. Location.
We've got 5 at the moment.
We've got 5, but I mean, we've got 3 of those. I think they should be pursuing it, and it's going to just be up to the government which property we put it on. We've recognized the panel conception that we all here like. We have a pretty good idea about the budget because the stone sign was on Ron's chart. And so it just respectfully requests further direction, and I would say that we've already got the direction.
So I just want to point out then, if it goes on private property, we're going to have a lease agreement with that property owner. So are you willing to pay money in order to go that route?
The Salvinaw signs are on private property. We don't pay for those because the person that allowed us to sign was happy to have a sign that talked about the village. So, you know, there's lots of ways to pursue that on a property that's private.
Director Schaefer has raised her hand.
Director Schaefer?
I would prefer Crown land or MOT land, because the private, we tend to the majority of people will have to pay. And if we didn't have to pay now, if they sell the land, the other people will come back and say you have to pay. And I don't think we should pay.
Thank you. I was going to say I agree with that. I would prefer it be Crown or MOT right of way because of just the vagaries of private property, change of ownership, sudden change in the terms, and just the added time and effort and hassle of staff having to keep track of these private agreements with private property owners.
Director Damer has raised his hand.
Yeah, thank you. You answered my question, Chair, but I also thought of another one is that, can we make sure, if we go ahead with this, can we make sure at a next meeting that we're fairly crystal clear on exactly what those locations look like, you know, a little bit firmness on, you know, what the pricing is, and the other difficulties that we may encounter, whether that means that we have to have MOTI with us in the pickup or, you know, those kinds of things, Mr. Story, just so that we've got a little bit more certainty. And then timelines, are we looking at probably doing it first thing in the spring? Obviously, we're running out of time now. This late in the game, you're thinking the spring would be the earliest.
I'm looking towards Mr. Vieira. He's your new stakeholder.
That's right. I forgot you're leaving us. That's right.
Chair Roden, it's Scott here. I just had a quick comment. I think we've answered most of these points. I think we have a pretty good direction. As far as being right on the border or the boundary of the regional district, I think if we're within a kilometer and it says welcome, I don't think people are going to say that, well, I should have had that welcome 900 meters ago. I think we'll be fine that way. I feel like the direction's pretty clear. We just need to come back with some details now when we maybe bring this to the board if this committee decides to push forward with this.
Maybe the panels, you could give a bit better preference. Your preferences are wandering. No.
Is there a consensus on the stone, first of all, or wood or metal?
Right, the stone I heard, but again, which blue one?
I guess if I may, I guess the question is, how many of us are in support of Region of BC's Best and how many are in support of Welcome? I think that's what I'm hearing. Personally, I like the Welcome, but I'll go along with the majority of the group if they think that they still like that tagline of BC's Best. I've never really liked that too much myself personally, but that's just me.
I'm sorry, I like the Welcome to the Thompson-Nicola Regional District, the right-hand one in the first panel, without the Region of BC's Best.
I agree that I don't like the Region of BC's Best.
So is there consensus on the blue Welcome to the Thompson-Nicola Regional District?
Yeah.
Okay, and is there consensus on stone? Yeah. Yes, okay. And hang on, I'm just going to go to the slide again. We've got 5 locations. Okay, consensus on Crown or MOT or private property.
Excuse me, Chair Roden, Director Rothenberger has his hand raised.
Director Rothenberger?
What's the point of even considering stone in view of the problems associated with it? As I say, we're not going to be building berms and runaway lanes, are we? Is that worth it to have stone?
No, I think stone is the most attractive. If that was the only consideration, that would be my choice. Given what we are hearing about the engineering problems and the additional steps, I think stone is one that we need to avoid, and my choice would be for wood.
Ditto.
Without a roof.
Right.
Director Roden, Director Stamer has his hand up, but perhaps we could do a show of hands as to the preferences moving forward.
Okay, so I think we've got the locations, 5 locations. We've got the sign, the blue, Welcome to the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. Show of hands, who would like stone? My hand is down. Anyone?
3 hands are up.
3 hands. And then who would like metal? No hands for metal. No hands, and who would like wood?
That's without the top though, right?
Without the top.
4 hands for wood.
So we're looking at the wooden signs and with or without roof. Who would like a roof?
1 for roof.
And I'm assuming everyone else is no roof? So we are looking at a wood sign, no roof, that says, blue sign that says, Welcome to the Thompson-Nicola Regional District. And we're looking at 5 of them on Highway 1 near Lytton, somewhere in the Okanagan that's not a freeway, Highway 97 near 70 Mile, Highway 5 near Breda, and Highway 1 near Chase. And anyone want to go for private property, or should we be looking at Crown or MOT?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I agree with you in that I don't think we want to do that on the private in as much as, even though Director Elliott has a good example with changing ownerships and all those kinds of things that you brought up. I don't even think we want to entertain that.
Okay, so is everyone pretty much agreed Crown or MOT is an option of where to actually put these babies?
Yes.
Okay, and an overall budget. If Director Story, am I out of line in thinking that we're looking at $18,000 to $20,000 per sign?
Yeah, I think you're in the ballpark when it's all said and done. And if we come back short, we'll be in the definitely be a positive experience.
Right, so we're looking at, say, a budget of for 5 signs with the out of the materials discussed, $100,000.
Yep.
Okay, so do we want to approve the 5 signs with the style and wood design on MOT or Crown land and approve a budget of $100,000 and ask staff to come back with a further report about the 5 locations to our next meeting?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Was that a yes?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay, any further discussion? Or have we discussed this one every way till Sunday?
No raised hands.
No raised hands. On the question, then all those in favor? Opposed?
Director Schaefer is opposed.
Okay. Then that is carried. Does everyone want a couple of minutes to go get some water, coffee, use the ladies' room, men's room?
I think I just have a nice little PowerPoint, and I think that's the end of the show today.
The end of the show. Okay. Is that Director Well or Film Commissioner?
Yes, it was.
Okay. Okay, then we will plow right ahead to 6.3, and we have a report from the Film Commissioner. Take it away.
Hello. Hello. Just one of the things Ken wrote on a notebook before he left, he says, oh my gosh, I forgot to thank the regional district because we did help fund behind the scenes and help him with advertising and certainly helped him get the word out. So we've worked very closely with Ken and I'm a huge fan and I'm so glad he's the writer in residence, screenwriter. Especially his writing background, which he didn't really expand on, is quite extensive. But the library will be presenting to the board of directors. So you have the report. I'm sure you all read it thoroughly, but I thought what I would do is add a PowerPoint that has has a lot more numbers that I think you'll be interested in. And we'll also set the tone for 2022. So in the report, I said, why is this year extraordinary? And I just want to delve into that a little bit more. Oh, it won't move. We did 4.6 million during a COVID year. That is one of our highest years since 2003. That's pretty darn good. And what you're going to look at the top half are USA big, fat, wonderful, big features that didn't film a long time here per se, filmed also all over the world or somewhere else and dropped a lot of money. Then COVID hit. And now you're seeing the onslaught of productions that were BC. We're also looking at productions that started to film their home projects here. Now, here's all their posters, and you'll see the top row, they're very high profile projects, and that's what we've been known for. But since COVID, things have changed a little bit. One of the things that we haven't been tracking until last year has been the our reality TV series. They really don't communicate with me except occasionally. They're pretty covert and want to stay that way. So I don't really have a lot of data to track them, which is fair enough. But nonetheless, they gave me a poster framed, so I like them. So I want you to look at some stats. Here's 4.6. Now that's cash right into our area. We had 119 location requests, which we always get about 100. We had 105 location packages, you know, that's fine. We had 28 days of scouting, 289 added new locations, 22 days surveys, 16 projects, and 79 shooting days. Let's look at this year. We have 2 projects going into production right now. One's filming now, one starts on the 25th. Look at all the BC productions that we have. No, never before have we had that many. And all the ones that are in green are shooting their entire projects here. That's huge in terms of our resources, and it's huge in terms of how things have changed since COVID. So here they are. They're not really big, high profile, except maybe the Good Doctor, which filmed in Merritt for 2 days. Some of the younger generations certainly recognize the movie stars. To us, they're, you know, I mean, I recognize in Gaslight one lady, she's from Yellowstone. The gentleman in The Edge of Sleep was based on a podcast. And he's what's called an internet influencer. Ray Stevenson on the right, I'm a huge fan since he was in Rome and the miniseries Rome, and he's been on Dexter, and I'm just a huge fan of his work. So I was very thrilled, but a lot of people don't know him. And now look at us. We're getting nice, pretty places. We had Just Clicked, a romantic, filmed all of its project here. These are what's called the Hallmark movies. And we had Listening to Love. They filmed their entire project. And they're also hiring local cast as speaking roles. Never before, really, we've had that, except for the odd time. So look what we're attracting. Urban stories, romantic. They want green trees. Not so much, yeah, okay, pine's okay. We do get on the lower left, we still get the spooky, the thrillers. You can't really see it, but there's crosses. We didn't get hardly any for post-apocalyptic. In fact, we didn't get one. And we got highway. Everybody seems to still like our highways and our roads. In fact, we may have a project next year that's got pretty high profile cast that we would know the names of, that postponed till next year based on actor availability. So look at the types of locations people want. They want beautiful homes, 60s, different kitchens, shops, cafes. One of our biggest challenges is that everybody, almost every project needed a hospital, and thank goodness for the nursing nursing school at TRU, because you can't get near a hospital. The Good Doctor, for example, would have stayed a lot longer, but they couldn't get access. And lovely neighborhoods. I kept saying, I've got 4,000 pictures of 16 different types of grass and different, configurations. So it's really been different. So here's our stats for 2021. This is September so far. So usually last year we had 119, now we're 72. We put out about the same packages, but what's big to us in terms of operations is they use Dropbox, these new productions, and it doubles our work. We had 64, 3 times as many days where we had to go out and scout and get locations, because up until now we didn't have a lot of houses, especially interiors. We had 289 locations added last year. This time 654, and there's still 40 that we need to add. And survey days, that's us out of the office or somebody hired to double up, is escorting clients around the area. So in terms of projects, we went down 3 projects, but in shooting days, 161. That's all more than double, or at least double. Anyhow, what's also different in 20 is we trained and hired more local crews than previous years. In fact, they're willing to train on the job. That's never before seen. So with the consequences, and I put in I've missed some here, but the city of Kamloops and to Kamloops to Secwepemc and what's the other, Sun Peaks have revised permitting and bylaws. In fact, city of Kamloops is doing that now. I counted maybe 3, 4 productions filmed inside, like in the city, maybe for a day or 2 or 4. And this year, 6 or 7, and staying for a number of days. Even the TNRD Civic Building, we've had people, can we use it for, for somebody to sit while we're filming, but never before have we had people inside the building. So now we have a process, and we've mailed out a campaign to say thank you. So we've mailed out 150 cards and 50 emails to say thank you to all the house owners. And we just ordered 200 more cards. And we figure we'll use those up by the end of year. So this has consequences on the budget. And right now, I'm glad Doug's here because I tell you, this is going to be weird. If you look at 2019, our budget for scouting was 12,000. We spent 32,000 on scouting, and 32,000, that was to secure Jurassic Park, which came out of the UK, Jurassic World, and The Stand and Twilight and other ones that cost a lot of money to scout and show them around or whatever. 2020, look at that, 12.5, and then we went up to 14. So Doug and we found some, I didn't spend some money, put it at 24 this year, and that's about where we came in. We're right on. So that seems to be the happy spot. If you think that's high, the Okanagan spends over 40 to 50,000 a year on scouting expenses alone, just to service these kinds of productions. And look at the hosting. Now this is where we pay the odd hotel room. We rent vehicles, drive them around, meals on the road. I hire drivers to drive extra cars and other things. In 2019, again, that's Jurassic, that's 13,000, renting great big vehicles, meeting them at the airports, things like that. 2020, it went down because of COVID. And also that went down because of the lockdown. We could only travel as far as a bladder would allow because nobody was allowing our scouts or anybody into the washrooms. And now 2021, now we're real down. The Canadians or the BCs are poor. So they'll stay at Airbnbs. We now travel in separate vehicles. I'm able to use pool, and they hire local to show them around. And gosh, with GPS, I'm missing turnoffs and they're showing me where places are. So it's a confined kettle of fish. How do we budget? What's going to happen next year? If before COVID, we had big fat USA and we still had some, and now we've got, BC, I don't know where we're going to go. You can look at what the stats mean. COVID costing maybe USA feature films too much money. Maybe they're staying in their country of origin, and maybe once the border opens a little bit even more and people are vaccinated or whatever, maybe it might loosen up. Or maybe there's scripts not needing our locations. It could be all of the above. What about BC productions? They never came to our area, but now they're moving into the regions to escape the lower mainland. Ken's just one example of that type of project. We have one possibly coming in winter. They're working with the city of Kamloops, being if they can film during the Christmas, the Santa Claus parade, they'll bring the production here. So it's totally in the city of Kamloops' arms in terms of that one. Now I want you to know, but meanwhile, while everything's kind of up and down over the last 2 years, we launched our new website. We came up with a new branding. We wanted Thompson-Nicola. This was senior staff choosing this branding and senior staff choosing the logos. We are partnering with Nicola with the regions, and we've put on a free accounting clerk course for anybody who wants to know how to do production accounting. We've got screenwriter in residence. We worked with the Film Commission, worked with the library to get Ken Hegan. They were great applications. We had about 13, 15 around and narrowed it down. He was also the screenwriter in residence in Vancouver, by the way. So he comes very highly recommended. On our social media, we're still posting with pretty pictures from our Explore TNRD, and that aligns also, keeping active on social media aligns with our goals and objectives. Here's one of Ashcroft, the Honor Ranch. Now here's something that's new in terms of operations. We needed a kitchen like the one advertised, and we're using Facebook to get crew, actors, and locations. Never before have we used to find locations. Look at all the kitchens everybody submitted. People were all sorts on their cell phones. So now we're really engaging our residents much more in the process of, they've got cell phones. So this is really helpful. Our studio study is going well. It's due in October. That's ongoing. And right now, Bones of Crow is a 5-part psychological drama seen through the eyes of the Cree matriarch, Eileen Spears, as she survives Canada's residential school system to become a Cree code talker in World War II. Bones of Crows unfolds over 150 years and is the first dramatic TV series that tackles the residential school experience that still affects generations of Indigenous people in Canada. They're here right now, been working almost 2 years on this project, and they're working very closely with the Tacomas to Secwepnik. And we've had a lot of casting and hiring of local talent and local crew who've never worked in film before. And I don't know if anybody will recognize, we have the friendship game right now. A group of teenagers in a small town discover a strange object that tests the strength of their friendship. And since I just read Maltese Falcon, I thought I'd put that there for those older. So right now we have 3,900 location folders in Real Scout, and unfortunately that shifted. But according to Creative BC, we have the most locations in the Real Scout library than any other region in British Columbia. I'm pretty proud of that. So in the last 2 years, the TNRD has had around $9 million cash drop into its economy. That's not including cast, our director salaries. That's not including airline tickets or anything that could be spent in Vancouver. And these are prices quoted by production managers. And that's a lot when you think that into our economy, and it's spent on cast, hires, accommodations, and whatever. And it also includes cast. What doesn't include is cast and crew spend. So 161 days they've been in our region. What did they spend? It could be quite a bit. There's no real way to track that. So we've done pretty good considering we're in COVID. But at the end of the day, when I look to 2022, the script is king. If we don't have the locations that the script wants, we could have all the locations, we could have the best people in the whole wide world here. It's all about what's in the script. And the second consideration is the budget. Can they afford to come here? And if they come here, can they hire local? Can they get the regional distance tax credit? And then what about the locations? I am confident we have the locations, but they gotta like them. We're in real tough competition with Lower Mainland. They want to stay there, and then with the Okanagan. Is this? Whew, there you go. So that's the presentation, and there you go. Hope it was not too painful. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much. You can add Ashcroft to your list of municipalities that have adopted a filming policy. We adopted one in June.
Oh, very good.
Director Stamer has raised his hand.
Director Stamer?
Thank you, Chair. Thanks very much for the presentation. I heard off camera that Ken was talking about, there's a possibility that his film may be at Sundance. Is that correct?
Yes, and he has applied for Sundance. And Sundance is super, 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 super competitive. But I was going to tell him, and I'll email him later, that film filmed here years ago and didn't make it into the Sundance Film Festival. But there's also Slam Dance. Slam Dance Festival is held at the same time as Sundance, and it's for projects that didn't quite make the cut. So he has actually two opportunities. So I'll let him know about that.
And when is the release date? I noticed that the release date is September the 30th. How is that released, his film? I just went and did it on the IMD site there, and it said the 30th. Is it going to be released rather quickly?
That's up to him and his editing. I don't know where he is in terms of his editing.
Is there a possibility that if, and this would be an opportunity in as much as that wherever he publicly decides to do a finished product of his film, is there a possibility that we can get a copy of that and put it in at the Paramount? Is that something that we could be doing?
I think that's very, very
I think, wouldn't that be a great idea where we could do it wherever he wants to have the thunder, that's great. But at the same time, possibly we could be lining it up so that maybe, I know we have a film festival in March, but is it March?
Yes.
Okay. Is there an opportunity that maybe some of these films, we have that buy-in, particularly with films that are in the TNRD, where we could have that opportunity to have a screening of that film around the same time?
Yes, that is a very, very likely possibility. We could possibly have it in the film festival, or we could also book the theater ourselves.
Right.
And have a showing.
I think the rest of the board would think that would be something that we should be doing.
Chair Roden, it's Scott here. I just had a quick comment, if I may. We're actually introducing Ken as well to the board during that meeting, and so it's kind of a replay of today. So that would be a great question. I think you could just ask him tomorrow.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any other comments, questions for the film commissioner?
No hands are raised.
No. Okay, so we have a recommendation that we receive a report for information.
I'll second that with appreciation.
Okay, so I made the motion and Director Stamer second. Is there any further comment, questions, discussion? No.
No.
Oh, right, on the question then, all those in favor? Carried. I have no new business. Does anyone else have any new business?
No hands raised.
Silence. All right. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn this meeting.
So moved.
And second? Director Schaefer, thank you. On the question, all those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, Chair Roden.